You're watching AWB TV. Welcome to Capital Focus, a closer look at the issues that are most relevant to Washington employers.
Welcome, and thank you for joining the inaugural edition of Capital Focus. I'm excited to help launch this brand new weekly public affairs program from the AWB. From now through the end of the legislative session, the AWB will keep you informed about the latest news here in Olympia. We'll bring to you timely interviews with legislators, we'll check in with Main Street business owners, and we'll explain how public policy will impact your business and your employees. I want to welcome to the program the host, AWB's Assistant Vice President of Government Affairs, Dave Mastin. Dave, we're excited to have you as part of our team and playing the role of host over the next couple of weeks.
Well, thank you, Chris. I'm excited to be here and to help bring these important stories to our viewers.
Our mission with this new show is to inform you about what's happening in your legislature and how it impacts your business, employees, and the communities you call home. We want to highlight policy that helps employers survive this time, filled with historic challenges from great division in our politics to social unrest and COVID-19, which is both a public health crisis and an economic crisis. And we want to highlight the ideas that will drive a strong and robust recovery. How can we ensure that the communities and industry and people who were left behind last time aren't left out this time? And what can we do to help speed up that recovery we all hope to see? In the coming weeks, we hope you, our members, Washington employers, and others find Capital Focus to be your weekly go-to for everything you need to stay connected with the 2021 legislative session. With that, I'll hand the show back over to our great host, Dave Mastin. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks, Chris. Let's get things started with a look at this week's headlines. The legislative session kicked off last Monday and runs through April 25th. Lawmakers have 105 days to pass a budget and address many historic challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic, widespread layoffs and business closures, an unemployment insurance crisis that means big taxes for struggling employers, an overhaul of the child care system and education system where schools have been mostly closed for almost a year. And lawmakers wasted little time hearing bills to raise taxes. On Thursday, the Senate Ways and Means Committee heard testimony on Senate Bill 5096, the governor's plan to impose a new 9% tax on capital gains. Tommy Gantz from our government affairs team testified against the bill, telling lawmakers that in the midst of a pandemic, their focus should be on economic recovery, not raising taxes. In another proposal, Governor Inslee proposed a tax increase on health insurance costs to fund additional public health activities. Well, the problem is that a new tax on health care will raise the cost of health care. And when cost goes up, it tends to reduce access to the very health care we need. Despite that, Senate Bill 5149 was introduced and in the first year would add over $140 million in additional costs to health insurance. And that climbs to over $300 million after that. Many experts say this will increase the cost on small businesses and make health insurance coverage less certain for employees and their families. And this is all being done at a time when our businesses are working hard just to stay open. Also this week, the House Committee on Environment and Energy heard testimony on House Bill 1091, which would create a low-carbon fuel standard, driving up the price of fuel for employers and families while producing little reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and no revenue for our transportation infrastructure. The capital gains tax, the low carbon fuel standard, they've both been proposed in the past, and it's no surprise that they're back again this year, although it is disappointing that legislators spent much of their first week in session debating new tax increases rather than economic recovery. It's time to focus on rebuilding the economy, not raising taxes. In other news, Washington State has received more than 600,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine. About 200,000 have been administered. With a population of 7.6 million people, we have a ways to go. First in line for the vaccine are high-risk healthcare workers and residents and staff of long-term care facilities. Next in line are individuals 70 years and older, plus people 50 years and older that live in a multi-generational household. And remember, even as more and more people are vaccinated, we still need to continue to wear masks, socially distance, and have fewer, shorter interactions. The AWB is working with state officials to think creatively and do more to ensure a faster vaccine rollout. The key to stopping COVID-19 and rebuilding our economy is getting as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. And employers are ready to do their part, from sharing critical information to providing the space for workers to get the vaccine. To learn more and get involved, please contact AWB's Amy Anderson at amya@awb.org. Much more still to come on Capitol Focus as we check in with AWB's Legislator of the Year. And next, we take a closer look at how the governor's new reopening plan is impacting employers and what they have to say. We'll be right back.
We can fly where you want to, we can leave your house behind. But if your friends don't mask, and why don't they mask? Well, they won't fly this airline.
You can fly if you want to, 'cause we do safety right. We have air that's clean and disinfectant machines zapping germs like an arcade space fight. And we dance
Do the dance, do the dance.
Everybody wash some hands.
Do the dance, we're always wearing a mask. Do the dance, do the dance.
No, seriously, please wash your hands.
Do the dance, do the dance.
HEPA filters cleaning commence.
Alaska Safety Dance. Alaska Safety Dance. Alaska Safety Dance.
Welcome back to Capitol Focus. And now, the close-up.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Dave Mastin. Many Washington employers are hopeful for a better year in 2021, but even with that sentiment, a recent AWB survey showed that 10% of our businesses are really struggling and may not survive. Recently, Governor Inslee announced a Healthy Washington plan, which creates new guidelines for reopening the economy. But the challenge is harder for some, like restaurants, bowling alleys, and other small businesses. We're going to learn more about that with our guest, Alicia Benson, President and CEO of Greater Spokane Incorporated. Alicia, welcome to Capitol Focus, and thank you for joining us. First off, can you give us an update on how business in Spokane are holding up in year 2 of the COVID-19?
Thanks, Dave. I'd say that they're hanging in there. This is such a tough and challenging time, and we're seeing some businesses are holding their own, but for the majority of our small businesses, family-owned businesses, some of our entrepreneurs, it's extremely challenging. They're really struggling both to keep their business afloat, support their employees, and it's really the length of this crisis that just continues to drag on. And so a lot of focus and concern for particularly these sectors most hit right now.
Can you share with our viewers some of the biggest challenges employers are facing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are two really large challenges. I think the biggest one is just the amount of uncertainty. As employers and as businesses, they want to plan by nature, and the lack of predictability, the changes with the new roadmap that create, I think, less of a roadmap for our employers, and particularly these sectors like hospitality and our entertainment sector. The inability to be able to plan and see a clear path creates so much uncertainty in our economy and for our business community. And then the other really large challenge is you layer that on with the need for more relief and support and resources. Our business community did not create the pandemic, nor did their employees, and yet they're being impacted at such a significant level. And so We're thankful there's new dollars coming through the federal government for PPP or the Payroll Protection Program, but we have more work to do around these resources relief grants. Really, to this level, it's just a drop in the bucket for some of these businesses. And so what can we do to create greater support for those sectors most impacted? Those are the two things we're hearing across the board.
Alicia, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I understand that we'll be getting back with you a little bit later in the program.
Great, thank you.
The challenges that Alicia mentioned in Spokane, I'm hearing similar stories from across the state. We'll be sharing some of those real-life stories in our next segment, The Employer Voice.
Employer Voice.
The current restrictions are impacting our business at two different levels, where you see the change in customer patterns simply from the restrictions and mandates that they're under. And then you also have the restrictions that are being put specifically on the food industry and indoor dining.
My business model is to tour guests, both locals and tourists, to our local breweries and to local restaurants. Limiting their indoor seating is really hampering and handcuffing me, and my buses are just remain parked.
Yeah, this pretty much sums up what you would expect right now as far as how it's going. It's not going. It's not going at all. And like I say, for the first time since this center was opened in 1958, this is the worst we've ever seen.
I miss doing what I love. I miss being around the community that I've built as a business and having those people support me. I feel so much time and critical creativity and the ability to plan for the future.
Although I understand the need to limit operations, complete closures for indoor seating is really overkill, and it hurts so many businesses.
This is a terrible string of business killing mandates that is going to put us under if we continue this on through the spring and into the summer.
When you have a business that's already struggling, particularly if you have the business owners relying on it for being their primary or their sole source of income, that is a death sentence. And so not only are you shutting down that business, but you're also taking away jobs from the local economy and ensuring, on top of all the struggles that they're facing with the pandemic, that only corporations come out of this alive.
I'm a phase 2 business, so I can't reopen until probably late spring, early summer, and I've already been closed since March 4th. So the ability to produce an income and to build my business has been swept away.
The insurance and the lights and the power and the water and everything else that are just the basic overhead of just an empty building continuing to operate. So yeah, we're operating at a deficit every single month.
The piggy bank is empty, and I am not receiving any assistance from grants or employment security right now.
Our elected officials, if I'm talking to you directly, you are charged with an amazing and daunting task. You have a dynamic state to work with that is deep in technology, rich in agriculture, high in pioneer spirit, and loaded with entrepreneurs. And there is one thing that connects us, and that is our story.
Lean on your local politicians and trust and work with the local leadership to coordinate those COVID efforts, because they are here, they know what's happening, and they can communicate with the people in their communities.
I feel the governor and legislature could really improve things by realizing that small businesses are not the problem, and yet we are the ones who are bearing the brunt of the impact of this economic shutdown.
Once all of us are heard, then we can move forward together.
Wow, those are some powerful words, and straight from our small business owners. We're all facing challenges, but the challenges confronting our small businesses, it seems extra difficult. And now we're going to pivot back to Alicia Benson of Greater Spokane Incorporated. Alicia, you've been a leader in economic development for years. Can you give us some guidance, a few concrete solutions that our lawmakers can work on this session right now to help our struggling businesses?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I would say that was incredibly powerful. And I think it's important that we realize as we walk into this session that this pandemic and the economic crisis, it's been uneven, and we have to look for solutions that help to balance those impacts. As we think about our restrictions, how do we think about it in a more even approach? And that really thinking about things like direct stimulus to these sectors that have been impacted in a greater fashion. And we heard it from some of them, they've been closed for 10 and 11 months. How do we make sure that we're getting relief directly to them? And that we need to give our small businesses a chance to open safely. They're incredibly creative, so how do we help them be able to open safely? And then I think, and we're hearing this every single day right now, how do we accelerate the vaccination rollout? We need it to be cross-sector in its approach. We need government, public health, and business community coming together. We have to have the ability to be motivated and creative together. So I think we can think about solutions where we can think about vaccination rollouts, sites, logistics, options. The private sector is incredible at sourcing people and resources. And so we want to be partners because we know that the vaccination is going to be the swiftest path to getting our small businesses and our economy back moving again. And then the last thing I'd say is that we have to, as we head into this legislative session, we have to draw out every old idea. This is about creating dozens of ideas, really diving into the creativity and innovation of this state that we live in. We have to be looking from loan programs and relief and grant programs to thinking about childcare solutions, broadband, tax relief, direct payments. We really have to be putting everything on the table because this is a historic time and it's going to require a historic response. And we want our legislature and our governor, the employer community, our private sector, we are ready to do that work with them.
Thank you, Alicia. Those are really helpful, great guidance. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you personally and Greater Spokane Incorporated for the work that you're all doing. Such good work in the Spokane region and, of course, across the state. Thank you for sharing your expertise with our viewers today on The Close-Up.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Next up, State Senator Mark Mullet. He's headlining our next segment, Washington Problem Solvers. We'll be right back.
Bay Marina is the largest privately owned marina on the West Coast, 1,250 slips. We have about 20 full-time year-round employees. We try to retain great people, and one of the parts of retaining good people is providing an atmosphere and benefits that keep them around and make us competitive in the marketplace. And so we look at the health choice through AWB as a key component to that.
And now, Washington Problem Solvers, presented by McKay Sposito.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Dave Mastin. AWB's mission is to create the right conditions so all employers can thrive. When employers create great products and solutions, they create jobs that support our families and our communities. They also create revenue to fund our schools and other state services. This is the foundation for the high quality of life that we are striving for in our state. We have legislators who understand this. They understand the value of supporting our small businesses and our entrepreneurs. That's why we're excited to introduce Washington Problem Solvers. Chris, welcome back. Please share with us why it's important to highlight the work that people are doing to solve problems.
Thanks, Dave. You know, it's no secret we live in a time where politics is more divided than ever. We see it at the national level and here in Olympia. The goal of this segment, an important segment called Problem Solvers, is to highlight the people who are working to find solutions to our state's problems. Whether it's Democrats, Republicans, Independents, we're going to engage with each of them to go forward in these important conversations. We can come together to get things done in a bipartisan fashion. So how can we solve the problems we're facing together? Our first guest is someone who has a demonstrated track record for seeking bipartisan solutions. In fact, that's why we were so proud to name him the AWB 2020 Legislator of the Year. As a restaurant owner, he is also someone who understands firsthand the challenges facing those business owners right now. It's my pleasure to welcome back to today's program Senator Mark Mullet. Senator, welcome to Problem Solvers.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Senator, this has been a challenging year for small business owners, especially for those in the restaurant, hospitality, and travel industries, just to name a few. You're working on important legislation that would offer a pathway forward. Can you tell us about this, how it would work, and how it would impact small business owners?
So, yeah, we did Senate Bill 5114. I co-sponsored it with Senator John Braun. The bill is not a messaging bill. This is a bill that's making an actual attempt to say we're not trying to just reopen the economy and pretend like COVID doesn't exist. It was a bill that simply says the governor's plan laid out phase 1 and phase 2. We're saying the legislature is going to move every region of the state into phase 2 immediately, and then we'll monitor things from that point. And if there's a region of the state that's having a huge outbreak or a big challenge, the legislature can move them back to phase 1. But the idea is in phase 2, restaurants are only open at 25% capacity. As of right now, we're one of 3 states in the entire country with indoor dining shut down. We're one of 3 states in the entire country with indoor fitness still shut down. And so even at phase 2 of the governor's plan, we're still in the top 10 states in terms of most restrictive rules on the books, but at least we're giving our restaurants and other small business owners a fighting chance to survive the next few months.
Senator, for employers that are sitting at home and hearing your message right now, how can they best engage on this important bill? Because this is an important bill about helping those that have been impacted or closed get back to at least 25% of operating capacity.
So we have a public hearing scheduled on the bill for Wednesday, January 20th in the State Government Committee, which is chaired by Sam Hunt. I encourage people to reach out and contact folks on that committee and just say, hey, we're not in denial about COVID and the public health risk, but we are saying that, I've been explaining to my colleagues, 85% of the Democratic governors elsewhere in our country have chosen a different path on reopening, and they care about public health still, but they've also chosen, just today we saw Michigan and Illinois reopen their restaurants for dining. And so a lot of these things are happening throughout our country. And so I just want to get away from this mentality. If you want your business open, that means you're a COVID denier, because that's not the case.
We're concluding the first week of the 2021 session. As we think about what the bills that were heard this week, there were a number of bills introduced regarding taxes. What's the status of the bills regarding how to get through this economic period of time? Where are the recovery bills at?
The big recovery bill we have to get to the finish line right away is obviously unemployment insurance. That if we don't get legislation passed there that makes sense, but by the end of this month, people are going to be stuck with these really crazy bills, the first quarter. And, I put a lot of time and energy into the UI fix. And that to me will be the one that we have to get right in the next week. That's coming out of Senator Kaiser's committee. But beyond the unemployment stuff, like you accurately pointed out, we spent a lot of time hearing tax bills this week and not enough time hearing economic recovery bills.
No doubt unemployment insurance is an item that's going to impact every single employer in the state of Washington. We're going to continue that really important work to address that problem as we go forward. Let's talk about one of those bills that did get a hearing this week, and the capital gains tax. Well, what would this do to small businesses, family businesses in our state? Your thoughts on that bill?
We did the hearing in Ways and Means yesterday. I think there was some really important, valid criticisms of the bill the governor put forward. Some of them are just almost seem like the bill just wasn't written well, in the sense that unlike regular capital gains, there's no carry forward provision. So one year you could lose $200,000 by selling a bad investment. The next year you make $200,000. The bill as it's written would just tax you. It would ignore the fact that you lost money on your capital gains the year before, which is the exact opposite of how we work at the federal level. I think it was really highlighted well in the hearing yesterday that they try to exempt people's retirement accounts, but that's basically exempting 401ks. That is ignoring the fact that for us, as a restaurant owner, my retirement is in my business. And I think that was definitely highlighted in the hearing yesterday as a huge flaw in the bill. And to me, the underlying message that's the strongest is we're in a recession. We're all getting our ass kicked. Let's not start talking about new taxes. Let's talk about ways that we can partner with the business community to get out of the mess.
We talked about recovery here a few minutes ago. In your mind, what are some of the best things the legislature can be doing right now to help guide and assist employers as we go through the economic crisis we're in?
I mean, I think there is the messaging. I think it matters. And when you send out bills that are causing anxiety for small business owners, I'm trying to explain to my colleagues, even if those bills never pass, you're not helping. People already have enough anxiety just figuring out how their cash flow is going to balance at the end of the month. I honestly, as we've already talked about, I think unemployment insurance is the big focus that we have to get right in the next week. It's very time sensitive because the clock's ticking. We have to get it done by the end of January. I think there's a connection to schools. Like, I've been a huge push for getting the K-12 staff vaccinated next week. I would really like, we could get them all vaccinated in the next week or two. And by, the end of February, we could have all of our kids back in school, which I think would be a huge help for making it easier for people to go back to work, knowing that their kids are in school and they're not trying to manage and juggle who's going to watch their kids at home.
No doubt vaccines are going to play an important role for us to returning back to normal or the new normal as we go forward here. Last question, what can employers do more to encourage more bipartisan leadership, more solution types of conversations?
Man, that's a tough, there's no silver bullet on that. I mean, I think the personal stories are really effective. Like, when you have your personal story, and believe me, there's probably nobody in the state who at times has been more frustrated with their governor than myself. Like, we've had our differences, and he came out pretty aggressively against me in my reelection efforts last year. But that being said, when I look at my colleagues, when people open the dialogue by bashing the governor, they start to tune out. So I think getting straight to kind of the personal challenges they're having of keeping their business afloat and really focusing on just that direct connection with their elected official, whether it's in the House or the Senate. And rather than, I personally feel that'll hopefully be more effective of making them sympathetic. I mean, I've really tried to highlight with my Senate colleagues on Senate Bill 5114, like, you got to remove yourself from this thing that, I'm trying to get revenge against the governor for my campaign. This is me saying, if we had a different Democratic governor in this country, and these businesses would all be open when session started on Monday, January 11th, would a single senator have been dropping bills to shut down indoor fitness or shut down indoor dining? We would not. So I said, let's look at this thing through the lens instead of bashing the governor. Let's say, what's our own policy view that we would have tried to move forward on? And I don't think, just trying to reframe it. Like, we have to, as the legislature, now that we're finally back after 10 months, go down the path that we know makes the most sense for the people that we represent. And so the more the business community can have those direct, honest conversations without, making them highly political and pointing fingers and just saying, I don't know what else to say. Like, I can't make this thing work. I'm juggling it, and you can't make the numbers balance. And I can take out another loan and have another deferred rent payment. But at what point, like, if I end the pandemic and I'm $250,000 in debt, like, how the hell am I going to deal with that now? Like, because I still need my business to pay my family expenses. So I think those messages will resonate with elected officials, and we just have to share them in a way where it's less finger pointing and just more this is my factual reality of how difficult my life is right now.
Senator Mullet, I want to thank you for being the initial kickoff guest on our Problem Solver segment. Welcome to our inaugural edition. I hope it looks just as good on the back end as it does as we work through this today. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing the important conversation and the important work we're doing together to solve problems and move our state forward.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, Dave, I'll hand it back to you.
Chris, Senator Mullet, thank you for all the work that you're doing on behalf of the citizens of Washington State. Coming up next, AWB's Grassroots Alliance. It's already alive and well in your town, or it's coming soon, and you'll want to get involved, so stay with us.
Washington has always been known as a state of makers, trailblazers, innovators, entrepreneurs. Now, as we recover from unprecedented challenges brought about by a pandemic, we want to build our economy back better. The AWB Institute looks forward to shaping this renewal with Washington in the making. This effort puts a focus on new innovations and collaborations in infrastructure, workforce, business climate, and other strategies designed to grow prosperity in every corner of our state. It also features economic data both at the state and county level to support local decision-making and measure our collective efforts. Join us as we work to make Washington stronger. Visit WashingtonInTheMaking.org today to learn more.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Mastin. Now, no doubt many of us have used the old saying, we're stronger when we work together. But taking that idea and creating a team that actually works, well, from basketball court to the legislature, it takes a lot of effort. AWB's Grassroots Alliance is a partnership of 93 chambers of commerce in every part of our state, from Bellingham to Walla Walla, from Goldendale and Renton. Here to tell us more is AWB's Director of Strategic Engagement, Drew Garson. Welcome, Drew.
Thanks, Dave. Today we're going to hear what's happening in Maple Valley in southeast King County. And joining me now is Erica Dial, CEO of the Maple Valley Black Diamond Chamber of Commerce. Hello, Erica. Welcome to Capital Focus.
Hey, Drew. Nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for being here. So how are things going in Maple Valley?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? We have some businesses that are doing okay, and they're kind of, some are even thriving. But like most other states and communities across the country, it's those entertainment type businesses, the restaurants, fitness centers, anything that has to do with kids or, classes. Those are the businesses that are hurting the most in my community.
So with all the businesses that are hurting and as we look towards economic recovery, what are 3 things that the legislature can do to help?
Sure. I would say one of the things that we advocate for almost on a daily basis is for the legislature to come out and somehow help those small businesses that have been affected, that have been forced to close, those that haven't, had a choice. They've been, like I say, the restaurants, those kind of places. Is there a way that they're monetarily or some other way that they can really help those businesses? But in reality, the only way that I think that that's going to happen is if we can help open those businesses up a little bit and maybe get to a 25% capacity, and they can do that safely, I think. And so really opening them up would be the best bet. But if not, then they need to find some sort of, financial assistance for them. I would say also the unemployment insurance, kind of the UI issue that's out there right now. I know a lot of folks are being hit with new bills or kind of a new rate on that. Actually, the chamber, we're small, is myself and my assistant. I had put her on furlough for a couple months over the summer. My rate went from, like, I was in a class 1, I went up to a class 8, like 1,000% increase in my UI. So I know those are affecting a lot of folks as well. And then ultimately, just hopefully the legislature doesn't do any damage or more harm by putting more regulations or taxes onto small businesses.
Great. I know, Erica, that for businesses to open up, we really need to have a strong rollout of our vaccine and make sure that the people that most need it are getting it. What are you hearing about the vaccine rollout in your area?
To be honest, I haven't really heard much about a vaccine rollout in our area. I've been in touch with our cities, both Maple Valley and Black Diamond, and they're also kind of ready and waiting to see what happens, and they have not have heard anything yet. So we're trying to figure out how chambers in our county can maybe work together to help facilitate that, but honestly, I haven't heard too much about it.
We hear a lot about businesses that aren't doing so well and a lot of the stories that are not so great. What are some success stories, though, that you've seen this year?
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised with some of my members. We've had a member her name's Cleopatra, or it's a Cleopatra Arts. And she had a space in our building here and would have classes for kids, like art classes throughout the summer or, during the school year. and she was not able, of course she was forced to shut down, and then wasn't able to pay for her rent, and so she kind of got rid of her space. But the cool thing was that she totally changed and went online and started figuring it out. It took her a while to kind of figure that out, but now she's like sending art kits to almost like something like 30 states across the United States. She's having online classes, and she's doing better than she was before. So those are kind of the success stories that I personally know about, and it's kind of heartwarming. At least it has forced some people to do things they weren't thinking they'd ever have to do, and for some it has worked. So that's one great example.
Well, great. Definitely having resilient and adaptable businesses are a strong point for us here in this state, and we're glad to see that they've been able to adapt in Maple Valley. So I want to thank you today for joining us, Erica, and it's always great to hear from you and from your members. Dave, back to you.
Thanks, Drew, and thank you, Erica, for sharing that, for sharing your perspective. It's great to see the positive energy and entrepreneurial spirit of our Main Street businesses across the state, and a great reminder for our state lawmakers that employers are working hard to create jobs and support our families every day. And here I want to give a reminder that we've got a great event on January 26th, and it's our first virtual Legislative Day and Hill Climb. I want to make sure you register today at awb.org. So tonight, we'll close our first edition by sharing some great news from the Seattle Seahawks. Although the season's over now and a lot of us are still struggling with that, the Hawks have worked hard to earn a special honor, and one that didn't make the news. They finished the season as the only team in the National Football League without a single COVID-19 case. And that's just a great example of a Washington employer doing the right thing and staying open while carefully following COVID-19 protocols, just like many other businesses across our state. This is AWB's Capital Focus. I'm Dave Mastin. Be safe, go Hawks. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching AWB TV.